Welcome back to the season. We are in the thralls of winter right now. We can't seem to get out of this cold patch here, snow, ice, freezing temperatures, and winding down on the season and coming up on the last month here before playoffs. We're going to talk about playoff seeding. I have some social media comments for Jay. So heartbreak losses. How do you deal with those? What do you tell your team? And many more things coming up right now. I want to start with this, Jay. Hey, through these podcasts, I've been like a hot take. You should try this. You might want to attempt this type of guy. And in those moments, I always put a qualifier. This is like if you're needing something out of a break, out of a timeout, or like you're stuck. This shouldn't be your number one plan. So I'll clip the stuff out and I'll put it on TikTok, 'cause that's where I have the biggest following. And I clipped out the part where I said last week, we were talking about the end of a game. You have to get the ball in. And we were talking about a guy leaving the back for maybe a lob over the top. And I said, one thing that I did is I lined them up at half court and I had a foot race to the ball. I want to put a disclaimer. That was just for like, hey, we got to get a catch at the end of a game. That was not my normal press break because I had like 10,000 views on it, Jay, and a bunch of people messaging me asking me for like a diagram. And I was like, I got to clarify, that's not our normal press break. So I have to put that out there for the people. You usually keep me in check and you'll add the disclaimer. But I did want to start with that. So here's the first topic of discussion. You guys lost a tough one the other night to Waukesha West. And every season, every coach loses tough games. There's almost no way around it in basketball because you play so many. A buzzer beater, a terrible call, I don't know, where you feel like you were like one was stolen from you and your kids are tearing up, they're hanging their heads. How do you approach that as a coach? What's the message to your team in the locker room? Because those are very, very delicate situations.
Yeah, for us, we've had our fair share of them this year. I think we've had 5 games decided by 4 points or less, where it came right down to it. We've had a tip in at the buzzer that beat us. 2 free throws with 3 seconds to go to beat us. We found different ways to let teams sneak back in and finish. And for me, it's always like over the years just been being consistent. The same type of thing. Like you get blown out. Like if you're playing good competition, there's a chance you maybe have a bad night and don't play your best. And what do you say after that? It's kind of the same idea. It's more heartbreaking in a close loss like that, or something buzzer beater at the end. But keeping your message consistent about continuing to show up for each other and stay together, and bounce back the next day ready for practice, so we can iron out some of the things that maybe cost us the night before. And we talk about that a lot. And and I think there's times where I turn it over to our kids, say, hey, what are you feeling right now? Like, what we don't want to feel like this again. How can we fix this? And what can we do about it? And sometimes they have some of the best insight. They're in it with you. It's not all you talking as a coach. Sometimes that needs to be done. I think sometimes we can say too much or over talk as coaches in the locker room after a game. And I think sometimes putting it on the kids a little bit and saying, hey, where are we at? What are you feeling? And what went well tonight? What are some things we need to clean up? And how could we finish that differently? And I think just getting them to think immediately about it while it's still fresh in their mind sometimes resonates into the next day at practice. They're bouncing back ready to lock in and bring energy and be great at practice. So it's not the hangover effect of, oh, we're feeling sorry for ourselves and coach just ripped us after losing a tight game, and now we're coming back the next day not ready to get work done that needs to be done. And that's kind of the way we approach it. I'm always really aware of, like, I don't have all the right answers. So opening to my assistant coaches and giving them a voice in those moments, I think sometimes can be good, because every kid hears people differently. And I think sometimes, when you do a lot of the talking as a head coach, it's easy for kids to tune you out. And if you open it up to your assistants at times, they have some really good insight, and it's a fresh voice that the kids hear. And they're probably saying a lot of the same things you were going to say anyway. So that's some ways we've approached it. And our guys have responded really nicely after some really heartbreaking losses this year. And and came back ready to work the next day.
I've been on both sides of a buzzer beater, and much rather be on the winning side because honestly, for me, the hardest part was I felt so much empathy for the boys. So I know how hard it is to feel like you left it out there and you won 99.999% of a game and you lost on, you know, that you lost on more plays, but in all actuality, like it came down to that one play, and whether it was a half court heave, in our case, it was a full court pass that got us a win. And you do everything the right way into the very end. And I felt so much empathy that I struggled to separate because I genuinely felt bad, but I also as a leader of men, you can't feel bad. You have to be able to rally and be like, we can't stop here because we're upset.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about is it's no different than one win. It doesn't make or break your season, and one win, one loss, and it just feels different because of how it happens. And I think the hard part, and the one thing I've went back and forth on this year, it was really difficult, was when you've played a great game, like stat sheet says you outplayed them. You did almost everything you needed to, right? You hit all the keys for the game that maybe you put on the board beforehand, like all those checked all those boxes, and you still end up on the wrong end. I think that's the hard one. What having words to say to kids when they've done everything you've asked except for finish it. And we had a team beat 2-3 different times, and they bank a three, and they hit an NBA three to send it to another overtime. And but we shoot ourselves in the foot and missed some free throws that would have ended it. We had a bad possession on offense where we gave it back to them and gave them another opportunity to cut the score down and stay in it. And those are the things that we try to point out right away. So it's like, man, if we just handle that situation a little better, or we step up with some confidence and knock our free throws down, it feels a little different right now in this locker room instead of feeling the way we do.
It's tough, man. Seeing kids dejected after leaving it all out there, and those are times as a coach where I think it's important to tell them you did do everything I asked. And I think there's certain games as a coach where it's really powerful for you to say something like, "It's on me tonight," and I think that models accountability. And I think you ought to model all those things for the kids. That I'd always pick, maybe we're on like a little bit of a losing streak. I'd always pick one game every one of those losing streaks, and I would specifically say, if anyone asks you why we lost, your parents, your cousins, your classmates, tell them it's me. Just tell them it was on me. Take the burden off yourself. You're 15, you're 16 years old. I don't care. Find a common enemy, blame me. I need you guys to focus on what you're doing right, not what you're doing wrong. So I think there's a lot of, you don't want to be a self-sacrificing martyr, but you do want to be able to model what accountability looks like and be able to rally your guys. I just think there's important little things in that. I have a few more little questions for you. Number one, I've seen on social media this new offense. I've never seen it played in person. I've seen it on clips from different high schools, and it is a Princeton offense with everyone up even higher in the center at the volleyball line. So if you're on the live feed, I'll show you a little diagram. But essentially, you have five guys all pretty high, and everything is like a handoff up top and then a back door because Princeton is so effective because you can backdoor with no help, essentially. And this even takes that center, I don't know, 10, 12 feet higher. And now there's a huge donut in the middle. Now you're so far from the basket. That's where I see potential problems. Have you seen that at all in your leagues?
No, I mean, nothing like that. The diagram just kind of reminded me of almost like a four corners that people used to run to stall or to run clock at the end of a game. That's what it reminds me of. Like you're just spreading that defense out so much that they can't help each other. But nothing like consistently that way. Maybe trying to break some pressure at the end of a game and spread you out a little bit. When you're trying to run and jump, that would reminds me a lot of that.
But people smarter than me have said in 10 years, this will be thought of as the Princeton offense of today. I found that super interesting. I struggle to understand really what a team does if the defense is sagging into help. Maybe they just pull up and shoot it. But that was the first question. The second question is, I have this hot take that I've run by people, and it's in my book, but it's one of those things I'm giving away for free. I think team captains are in the year 2026 nonsensical. Um, I don't think you need to name leaders anymore. I think kids will step up and lead without you naming them. And in the most realistic sense of game management, they don't get to do anything different. Like, before games, I used to meet with refs and they'd be the only two that could talk to a ref during a game. And I realized about a few years in that they weren't even letting my captains talk to them. They'd tell them to shut up. And I was like, then why are we doing these meetings? And then I was like, wait a second, you're losing 2 minutes of warm up time in this stupid meeting that you're not even allowed to do anything after attending it. And I made the change. I stopped doing team captains, and I also sent my two bottom of the bench guys to those meetings, so that all my good players that were about to play could get a full warm up in. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we start the year out with a really good article that we have our entire varsity read together and discuss, called "A Leader in Every Locker." And we approach it kind of that way, that everybody brings something to that locker room in a leadership form, whether it's leading by example, or some of your seniors that have been around have more of a voice and can share with the younger guys like the ins and outs of being a varsity player. So we try to emphasize, we want everyone to be a leader. Find your place on this team and how you lead others, whether it's in a small drill or small group work, or um, you're on the scout team and you got to be the voice on that team, while some of the starters are over on the other group, that sort of thing. But leader in every locker article, really gets kids thinking about, how do I lead, and where's my place in the leadership, hierarchy with this team, that where I can have a voice, or have some impact. And that's really worked well for us. We don't necessarily pick captains either, other than for the formality of, like you said, meeting with the officials before a game. We try to again emphasize that we want all those guys to find some sort of leadership role. And then we kind of, as coaches, have individual meetings where we talk about their leadership style, and what we're seeing, like, trying to pump them up and say, hey, we saw you doing this the other day, and that, that was great leadership for what our team needed right there. I heard you make this comment after a game, or on one of our shout out Mondays or whatever, where, that was great. That's stepping up and being vulnerable in front of your teammates and saying something that needed to be said. So, yeah, I think in today's world, I talked to like our baseball coach here at our high school. They don't do captains anymore for that reason. There's no value to one or two guys being looked at as they're the leaders. Everyone needs to play their part. So,
Because in theory, if you are a leader, you shouldn't be have to be named a leader to be that leader. Like, if you have the intangibles that have humility, work ethic, selflessness, all those things, you shouldn't need someone to say, hey, that's our leader. You should be leading
right,
anyways. But,
just are, right? You just are.
right, every great historic figure has a crusade. My crusade that I might try to get historic status with might be ending pregame meetings, because I just don't. I do. Why do you think they do them? Because no one's learning any new rules. You're not increasing sportsmanship. I don't think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it could be taken care of with just the officials and the coaches. I know in our state right now, before every game, the athletic trainer and AD usually come out with the officials and coaches and captains at this point, and they talk about, in the case of an emergency, here's where this is, here's where that is, here's where the trainer is going to be if you need something. All things that could be done with just the coaches and officials, I think, that way. And typically the officials keep it really short. It's, hey, you know, uh, keep talk to your own side. Don't talk across to the other team. Play hard, have fun. Like, let's have a good game, and that's about the extent of it a lot of times. And again, I think they probably would look at it similar to the way we do. That, hey, this is kind of an unnecessary thing to bring these kids in to talk. Like, let's just have the coaches meet quick and then off we go.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to the thing people care about. We have in the state of Wisconsin, we have computers determine playoff rankings. How long has that been going on? 4 years?
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe 5 years now. I think we still did in person coaches deciding. Since I got to Oakland, maybe our first 3 or 4 years, I think, and then after that, it went to the computers. Maybe like right after COVID, I think
Yeah,
is when we started doing it that way. So
yeah, and it's much debated in our state because there's a appearance of murky waters where the coaches don't necessarily feel like they know the full system. Now, that brings me to social media again. So I posed on X a quick poll for high school coaches. Do you prefer seating done by humans, which would be the coaches, or computers? It had 85 votes. So I feel like that's a decent amount of coaches participating, and 71% said coaches and 29% said computers. Now, here's where I come in as a little bit contradictory. I preferred computers because I had specifically heard in my situation of coaches navigating their seating and being weird about their seating. The only thing I felt like computers really could not comprehend was you have a star player that gets hurt the last game of the year. That's a big deal. So my last season, we were a really, really good team. I think it was going to be my best team. I don't know if I've told you this. We were on a 10-game win streak, and in one game, I lost my best two players for the season. We lost the rest of our games, but we got a decent playoff seed. And I was like, if their humans voted, we would have been the 16 seed because these two guys did it all for us. Where do you stand on that as far as humans versus computers, and why?
Yeah, so I mean, just a few thoughts here. I think since the computerized seating has come in, um, they've done a nice job of working, with from the WA and the Coaches Association working together to continue to update the model that they use and the formula they use to try to figure in some of the things that maybe weren't there the first few years. And I'm not saying it's perfect; it obviously isn't. There's still mistakes made, and there's still people that are going to kind of be up in arms when they come out and go, "Hey, we should be here. We should be here." But with that being said, one thing that was really big, I think, this year for our coaches association was we worked with the WA to get them to start releasing the pairings starting this Sunday. Actually, they're going to release the pairings 3 weeks ahead of time here before tournament, and you can kind of see where you're at. And I think that's going to eliminate maybe a little bit of like the surprise of when it comes out going, oh, we shouldn't be here. Our seat should be this. And now we have a week to get ready. But now you have 3 weeks and okay, well, this is where the computer sees us. We still have 3 weeks of games where we can do something about it. We can go win some games here and we can, move up a slot or move up 2 slots. Or if we lose a couple, we might drop down to here. And I think it, helps. And I would love to see them in February, release them the first Sunday in February and every Sunday all the way up till the final one comes out. So you can see within a week, like, hey, we just went and knocked off a really good team in our conference. And then the next Sunday you look and, we just went from a 10 seed to a 6 seed. That must have been a huge win based on the formula. And you can start to figure out how things work a little bit. And I'm really happy that, the WIA allowed that and that they were open to it, because I do think it, helps coaches a little bit as you go into the final weeks of your season, kind of maybe motivate your kids to say, hey, here's where we're at. Where do we want to get to? What matchup might be really good for us if we can take care of business here? And, and it also gives people that are on podcasts like this one or a radio show something to talk about for the last month of the season as they look at those brackets and potential matchups coming up. And I just think it elevates the game of basketball in the state in a lot of ways. Going back, there's a lot of coaches that do like the in-person. And, as I've told all of you, this is my 19th year, so I've been in a lot of the in-person meetings, more in-person meetings than not. And there is some negatives to that side of it too, because you get, more teams from one conference than another are all in that sectional. And they come in with already a mindset of like, oh man, like let's help our conference teams out and see if we can't get them a good spot here. And, that's not right either. When you've had a good season and someone perceives that maybe you're not as good a conference or not as good a team as someone in their own league, and they vote you down. I had one year where we had a good year. We beat some teams head to head, but I think everybody consensus wise thought we would be the 6th seed out of 16 teams, right in that area anyway, within a couple spots probably. And there was a guy from one conference that put us the 14 seed, and it's like, otherwise it wasn't even close. Like, he did no homework. He just put us low and put all of his conference teams up toward the top. like didn't do any homework, just flat out tried to screw the vote, and it's like there's some of that as well, and I don't think we want that either. And when coaches are fair about it, yeah, I mean that, coaches know, they follow, they watch film, they know what's going on, and think that way. And, I think then you can get it right or close to it. But, you get a chance to rebuttal, at the end, if you want to try to jump a spot and say, hey, we should be over this team because of this, that's the nice part, because you do have a say, or with the computer, we don't. But in the end, and I've been saying this since the computer stuff come out, you still have to go out and beat good teams when it comes tournament time. You may, as a good team, get a weaker opponent in the first round, but by the regional final and the sectionals, you're having to knock off really good teams every night. It's not going to change much for you, other than maybe that first game you get just a little better opponent or a little weaker opponent. It doesn't matter what conference you're from. You're going to get matched up, and you have to win or you're done. And that's the beauty of playoff basketball, and that's why everybody loves the NCAA tournament.
Right.
They pick the matchups, and you may get a easy first round game, but from there on out, it's a dogfight every night.
I think one, maybe two teams get screwed a year. In the grand scheme of things, that's not that much. And I know what someone might say, well, how would you feel if you're that team? I just don't know anything in life that is 100% infallible. An interesting comment, Mallory Leibel, Wisconsin coaching legend, she's in college now, she commented, she said, it's really interesting because when it was human vote, so many coaches complained about the system and wanted computers. And now so many are against it. And I think it's a grass is greener. I think if we went back, they'd be like, wait a second, I want computers again. I personally didn't like, man, it's kind of interesting. We're on the same page because we're in the minority. I personally didn't like driving an hour for a meeting that I think everyone had their seeds already written out prior to the meeting. And we all had to talk about why we think we fell where we were. And I was like, this is so stupid. I've gotten 1 through 16 written down on my paper right now. I might change like the 8 and 9. I might change the 13 and 14, but that's not worth it to me in a world where efficiency matters. So we're together. So congrats, Jay.
One other thing, and I've kind of thrown this out there amongst the coaches association thing a little bit, but it's too bad we can't find a happy medium where the computers set the initial bracket or seeds, but then having a panel of maybe retired coaches that are following basketball throughout the year, that they can go sit down before it's released and look at it and go, is there anything going on, like, hey, Bigfoot lost their 2 best players here and we got them as a 6. They probably are more an 8. Like, maybe we just flip that right now, knowing that they've lost their last 5 games without those 2 guys. That retired coaches, are a treasure in any state, and they watch a lot of basketball still. I'm on several committees with guys from Mr. Basketball to the all state selection committees with some retired coaches that they are really in tune with what's going on in their area, especially. And if you can find, a 6-person panel for each division, or some guys, even if they're going to do all divisions, I mean, I think those guys would be the ones that, hey, let's take a look at how the computer kicked it out. Let's see what's going on with each of these teams ahead of time in the month leading up. And then let's maybe make some adjustments to try to get it right. I think that would maybe pacify some of the complaints of that. There's no human element here, where they know if there's injuries or if a team plays in just a really weak conference and they have a bunch of wins against weaker teams, that the computer can't tell that. But I don't know. I think down the road they'll continue to look at stuff like that. I don't sense that we're going to ever have oh, this is it. This is the way it is, and this is it. I think there's always going to be open to conversation of making it better. And I hope it is. I really think it's our duty to put kids in the right spots and not screw anybody over. But like you said, it's usually a couple teams. And it was the same way when coaches did it. Usually a couple teams got screwed over, and they felt like they did. And the only part there that people could live with is you could sit in the room and look around and go, you knew which coaches screwed you over, And so you had kind of like, oh man, that guy, I know how he voted, because you could see it on the screen or you could see it on the printout, and it's like, that guy didn't think we're very good. So might want to keep that one in the back of my mind, that sort of thing, where now it's, the computer just doesn't think we're very good. So who do you blame? You don't have nobody to blame. But
it's just like all conference. I had serious issues with all conference. And what it comes down to is flawed human beings. making imperfect decisions. I remember one year I had an all-state player who was by far the player of the year in the conference, and we're still the only team. We're the only team left playing in the playoffs during the meeting, so it's not like we didn't win. And there's another coach, well, I'll leave nameless, who not only didn't show up to the meeting, he ranked him number 5. And I was like, what? That doesn't, like, you can't do something that egregious and not show up. But that just goes to show you that humans, as much as we think we're always right, there's always someone in the room that might spoil it. And computers at least make it even. I think there's an even formula. You guys know what's in the formula, but you don't know the weight, right?
Yeah, essentially, kind of what they're looking at. You can, can't figure out the weight. You can kind of, some people try to figure it out like reverse once they come out. Go, all right, like what's the formula? We're head to head. Strength of schedule, things like that. Like, is there a way to kind of figure it out? But yeah, I mean, they tweak with the weight of it from year to year to try to even things out a little better, make it more competitive, I guess. So.
Well, speaking of, I've in the last week I've been working the phones trying to figure out something to do for the playoffs, and I've hammered down the Prep Hoops crew. So Mark Miller and Brett Pickards are going to join me for a live show that Sunday. They come out. So what we're going to do is we're going to let the brackets come out. We're going to sit on it for maybe a few hours, look through it, and then do a live show. Because what we noticed last year when we decided to do this was everyone that was doing the tournament talk was kind of generalizing, and it was like, I'm not sure you watched 90% of these teams because you're just picking the 1 seeds. So me and Brett, we decided, because I watched a lot of Wisconsin basketball last year. He watches even more. And we did a show, and it went really well. Still our best episode to date. This year, since I have not been watching Wisconsin hoops, I needed to phone a friend. So we got his colleague, Mark Miller. And I think it's going to be a really good show. Now, my problem, Jay, is I've got to narrow this down. I can't do this for 8 hours. So I've got to find a way to get this down to like 3, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Brett and Mark are going to be awesome. Any of you watching, tune into that because Mark's a legend. He follows basketball more than anybody in the state of Wisconsin and has spoke highly of our kids and wrote great articles about so many kids over the years that have benefited them and benefited coaches and players and teams. But, Mark will be great, and he's very knowledgeable. Again, serve on several committees with Mark on the Coaches Association. And when we sit in those Zooms, Mark talks and people listen because of what he knows and his background and all the games he watches. And I don't know how he has time to do it all, to be honest with you. He's a basketball encyclopedia. But so that'll be a great show. As far as shortening it up, I mean, I think when you look at each sectional, just highlighting maybe a couple surprises and then a couple great matchups for the first round and potential down the road matchups that you see make it pretty easy. You kind of look and go, yeah, a couple of surprises with the way the brackets came out, and here's a couple big first round matchups. And down the road, we could see a great sectional final with like a Wisco and Wisconsin or West Allis Central. Those are, things that we're looking for in this one. Boom, on to the next one. But you're right, because it's easy. You catch yourself like, man, let's analyze every game here because there's so many good ones.
I think that is the show that put this podcast on the map last year. So I'm grateful for that. And then when we got to state, we did a draft, and we drafted teams that we thought would win, did a whole point system. And I don't want to bring it up, but I will bring it up. I smoked Brett, and we'll just leave it there. and I just think it's cool to have that coverage. And it's nice when it's clear that the people talking about it have watched. When it comes to the player rankings, team rankings, all that stuff, like I don't mind it. Some people like really don't like it. I don't mind it as long as you've watched the kids you're ranking and the teams you're talking about. And if you've done that, I've got no qualms with it. So that'll be coming up here. Who you got coming up this week?
Yeah, so we got the weekend off here, no varsity reserve. So we got a couple good practices coming up. And then we have Kettle Moraine on Tuesday. It's our last home game of the year, which is weird being really early here in February. But, so senior night on Tuesday with Kettle Moraine on Tuesday for senior night. And then Friday we go to Arrowhead, who's leading our league right now, which will be a great battle. They're about 15 minutes down the road. So always fun to go down there and see what we got against a really good program and a well-coached team. And then we got, some varsity reserve. We're getting some of those guys that maybe don't always get a chance to get on the floor and see what they got next Saturday again. So looking forward to a great week. And part of the reason we don't have another home game the rest of February is we flopped out a home game to be able to play at the 5-serve the last week of the regular season. So kids are looking forward to that. Our fans and everyone has come to those games over the years, and they've been really kind of a fun event for our community. So it was worth it to give up a home game to be able to play in a beautiful arena, down in Milwaukee, and enjoy some team time together after we watch the Bucks play. So.
How do you get into one of those games? And if you're listening, Pfizer's where the Milwaukee Bucks play, and they've been hosting a lot of high school teams. How do you get in one of those?
Yeah, so for a long time, they've done what's called the Prep Series. And so they host a series of different games throughout the course of the season. Usually it's on a night where the Bucks play like a 7 o'clock or later game. And they'll bring in, any high school team that wants to play. You can email their rep and say, hey, we'd be interested. And then you find a date, find another team that wants to do it with you. And then the trade-off is they don't charge you anything, but you have to buy tickets to the Bucks game that night. So there's like, if it's a weekday game, I think it's like 50 tickets. If it's a weekend game, it's 75 tickets. And then they give you kind of a discounted price on those tickets as well. But they really, want to find a way to give back to high school programs. Boys and girls can play there. Want to get back and not make it, it's $5,000 to play here. It's not, like you can find another team, experience this. They roll out the red carpet. They put your graphics on their scoreboard, and you bring your home PA announcer, so you get your own home guy, doing that, and it's kind of fun. And I found over the years that we played in it maybe 6 or 7 times now that the other people that really appreciate it are the officials, because a lot of times we do it as a non-conference game, so we get to pick the officials. And there's some guys in our area or that we have had over the years that just do a great job. That you call them up and say, hey, it would be awesome if you'd come to the 5-serve and ref our game. And they're like, hey, I've never been on that court. That'd be cool. So, the officials really get into it and appreciate it as well.
Well, do me a favor and stay on that sideline locker room, because anyone would do a better job than Doc Rivers coaching coaching this team. So we're going to leave the people with that, though. Check out the season next week. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.